Now, you know, there is yet another form of masking here inside Photoshop, something called clipping groups, which I've got to show you. They're really cool, and they're really easy to work with, and I use clipping groups all the time in my work. Again, yet another non-destructive way to work inside Photoshop. And you know, what I'm going to do here is, in this exercise, I'm going to show you the basics of clipping groups and kind of get you comfy with the idea. And then in the next lesson, what I'll do is I'll show you more of a practical, real-world application of clipping groups. And you know, in this exercise, what I'll do is I'll throw a couple of other quick things at you, little things here in Photoshop that I haven't had an opportunity to show you yet. So I don't have any files open here, obviously. I've closed out of all of my open files. And what I'm going to do is I want to go and create a brand new blank Photoshop file, which I don't think I've done yet with you in this course anyway. So what I'm going to do is, well, I could choose File New, I suppose. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command N or Control N there over on the Windows side. And what I want to do is, I've already set up my dialog box here. Just make sure yours is the same as well. My width and height are both set to 5 inches. So type in 5 for both the width and height. And make sure your unit of measurement is set to inches there as well. And then my resolution I've set to 300 pixels per inch. Okay, when you have that in place, go ahead and click on OK. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I essentially want to create a circle in the dead center of this document, and there's a really easy way to pull this off. What I want to do is I want to use rulers and guides here in Photoshop, and if you've used rulers and guides in any of your other Adobe programs, it's exactly the same thing. What I want to do is I want to turn on my rulers, and I'll do so by hitting Command R or Control R, again over on the Windows side, and you should get your horizontal ruler running across the top of your document and your vertical ruler running down the left-hand side. Now, I want to create my ruler guides, and if you've never worked with guides before, essentially they're on-screen visual aids to help you lay out your documents. We use them in InDesign and in Illustrator, and of course here in Photoshop as well. So here's what I'm going to do. What I want to do is I want to find the dead center of this document. So our document is obviously 5 inches wide and 5 inches in height. So what I want to do is I want to place a guide at the 2.5 inch mark on the horizontal ruler and another guide at the 2.5 inch mark on the vertical ruler. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring my cursor into the vertical ruler, anywhere sort of inside that vertical space there, and I'm simply going to click and drag out, and that's going to create my guide for me. And I'm going to move my guide. I'm keeping my eyeball up on my horizontal ruler running across the top of my document, and I'm going to drop this guy, as I say, right at the 2.5 inch mark, right there. Okay, perfect. And we should get this light blue line there. This is our guide. It's a non-printing guide, by the way. Let's essentially do the same thing for our vertical ruler. So I'll bring my cursor now into my horizontal ruler. Anywhere inside this space here, click and drag down and drop this guy at the 2.5 inch mark on the vertical ruler, just like that. All right, wonderful. We know where the exact center of our document is now. So I'm going to turn off my rulers, again, just by hitting Command R or Control R on the Windows side. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my elliptical selection tool or my circle selection tool. So over inside the toolbox, I'll go and grab him, this fella right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my crosshair right over top of the center point there where my two guides converge, and I want to create a perfect circle from the dead center. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Option here on the Mac or Alt on the Windows side and click and drag, and that's going to create my oval selection from the center. But don't forget, I wanted a perfect circle, right? So while I'm holding down Option or Alt, I'm also going to hold down Shift simultaneously, and that'll constrain my selection to a perfect circle. So what I'm after is something about that size. Okay, perfect. We're almost done here. The next thing that I'm going to do is over inside the Layers palette, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer. So of course I have my background layer there. I'll go and create a new layer here. And you might want to rename this guy. You could call him Circle or something like this. You know what I'm going to do though? I'm going to call mine Cookie Cutter. Now, I know that sounds kind of strange, but stick with me here. So, cookie cutter. Okay. Now, what I want to do with my cookie cutter layer is I want to fill my selection. And here's the trick. The color that you use to fill your selection doesn't really matter. You could fill it with white. You won't see it because it would be white on a white background, right? Obviously. Or you could fill it with black or gray or green or whatever. It doesn't really matter what you fill it with so long as you fill it with something, right? So what I'm going to do here anyway is I have black as my foreground color swatch. That's what I'll use to fill my selection. So I'm going to hold down Option here and hit Delete on my keyboard to fill with the foreground color. You've seen this a couple of times already. And then finally, I will deselect, Command D to get rid of my marching ants, Control D there on the Windows side. And I want to temporarily turn off my guides as well. I don't really need them anymore. So check this out. I'm going to hold down Command or again Control and try hitting the semicolon key right next door to your L key on your keyboard. Hit that guy, and that will temporarily turn off your guides. They're still there. I can hit Control or Command semicolon to turn on and shut off my guides. Kind of a neat trick. Okay, so we have our setup here. Now, what about this thing called a clipping group? Well, what I'm going to do here is I've kind of ran long here, so I'm going to get into the basics of clipping groups next, and then in the following exercise, I'll give you that real-world example. So let's get into the basics of clipping groups next.